Black flag on the window seat.
The first shot shows curtains being drawn over a window. This symbolises the fact that the protagonist hides away from the outside world. After the curtains close, the screen becomes darker. This is due to an effect that we added to add to the fact that the rest of the scene is darker than this one, to bridge a gap between them as a transition. The second shot shows a can of beans being opened. We chose beans as they're a food most often eaten by lonely homeless people who do not have ovens and so heat beans or eat them cold. And we took off the wrapper from this can of beans to make them look even more cheap and unbranded. This shot shows a shadow moving over a cabinet. This is to show an awareness that there is a presence inside of the room that is moving, the protagonist. However, we do not see the full thing, we only see the shadow. This shot shows another shadow moving, the shadow of the protagonist's hair, as he moves in front of a cabinet. This is to bring awareness of the fact that this is an actual person, as the silhouette of hair is recognisable. The next shot shows the lid of the bean tin surrounded by bean juice. This is just to show a through line of action that the bean tin has been opened, and this is evidence of it. The next shot shows the nameless protagonist putting the beans into a bowl. Now, this shot was slowed down from its original speed, as it was felt that it took too quickly. This shot was slowed down from its original speed, as it was felt that the action was too fast. However, the sound effects remain at their original speed, so we have to move them around to fit the new, slower action. If you look carefully, you can see that the sound effects are not perfectly in sync with the action, but they work rhythmically with the background music. Right, the next shot shows the protagonist slamming down a picture frame. It is never seen what is inside of the picture frame. The sound effect of the slam works rhythmically with the music, as do the sound effects in the previous scene. The protagonist then turns around and walks away. We made sure on purpose to keep what was inside of the picture frame out of view of the audience, to add a sense of mystery and unknowing. The next shot is a functional shot, continuing the through line of action, showing the nameless protagonist walking over to the sofa. The following shot is a close-up shot showing the nameless protagonist's hand picking up a cold bean. The following shot shows the nameless protagonist eating the cold bean, using his hands, with sound effects that are graphic and intentionally uncomfortable, result in the audience feeling mildly discomforted. We have continually received criticism for this scene and the sound effect, however, we have kept it in due to the fact that it makes the film into a more novel experience. The following shot shows the picture frame falling down onto the floor quickly. The very last frames of the scene have an earthquake effect added to them to imply that there has been some sort of shaking as a result of the picture frame falling down onto the ground. It is still not clear what is inside of the picture frame. It's a very quick shot from a low angle, around the floor level where the picture frame falls. The following shot shows the protagonist reacting to this. He turns around and looks in the direction of the picture frame. It is important to note that the picture frame could not have just fallen off from the place it was placed before, so it is implied that there may be some sort of supernatural procedure at work. It is the first time we see his face in full, clear view. This is followed by a low-angle shot of the protagonist placing down his bowl of beans and running over to the site of the fall. The following shot sees him pick up the picture frame as the sound of glass that is smashed rustling around plays, because the picture frame has smashed its glass. The next shot sees the protagonist running back in a similar angle to the shot where he puts down his beans to the sofa. The next shot is an out-of-focus shot that sees the protagonist run over to the sofa, sit down, and then regains focus as he throws his head down. The next shot is a close-up of his hair as his head shakes. This is to show that he is disapproving of the scenario that has caused his picture frame to break. The following shot is from the place that the picture frame was placed before, and it is in incredibly low frames per second. However, this was due to the fact that we could not figure out a way to extend the scene to fit the time constraints, so we slowed it down immensely, and if you look carefully you can see the individual frame transitions. However, we feel that the effect is not too obvious. The following shot sees the protagonist's shoes on the carpet as he is sitting down on the sofa beside the bowl of beans. The shot after this is a slow zooming out shot of the protagonist sitting on the sofa, looking down at the picture frame in his hand. The Following the zoom out, we have a panoramic shot of some outside out-of-focus lights. This is to show the transition between the first half of the intro, which is indoors, and the second half of the intro, which is predominantly outdoors. This shot shows the protagonist entering the woods. As he goes further into the trees, he becomes less visible. This is the first glimpse of the protagonist in the second part of the introduction, and shows the protagonist from a much further distance than the other shots have shown him. He appears small to contrast with the largeness of the nature and the wilderness around him. The next shot sees the protagonist pass the camera as he walks into the dark woods. You can see streetlights that provide some light for the scene, so it is not entirely dark and difficult to see. The next shot is one intended primarily for artistic purposes and doesn't have much relation to the rest of the film. Is a close-up shot of the street lamp being eclipsed by the protagonist's hair. This shot is mainly to work with the background music, as the line "but can't you see your" works perfectly with the rhythm of this scene. Then we have the first of a few cuts to complete black from the second half of the intro, which is followed by a shot of the protagonist looking around in desperation, unsure of what you can find in the contrast between the urban and the rural, behind and in front of him. Then it is followed by another cut to black, which mainly works as a rhythmic aid to help the scene transitions work more in time with the rhythm of the song, showing the protagonist sitting on a fence looking out at the same streetlights shown in the first shot of the second half of the introduction. This is to show a desire and a yearning inside the protagonist for an outside life. We then see the protagonist leaning against a street sign as he looks off in the distance, while the credit "directed by Ben Trelaw" appears in the lower right corner. This is then wiped away by the lights of a car that passes, which shows this technique as it makes the titles look like a part of the environment, even though they're obviously not due to their two-dimensional nature. Then the text starring Matthew Haddock in the bottom left corner occurs in the following scene, which is then taken away as the protagonist, played by myself, Matthew Haddock, walks past the title, which fades out as it is completely walked past by the protagonist. The protagonist then, in the same shot, walks into the darkness over a hill, and the scene then cuts to black. The following shot is a panning shot showing the streetlights, which then move over to a rural field that seems to go on forever. This is followed by a zoom, which, due to the resolution of the cameras, makes it look like the scenery is moving past the camera as it moves, sort of like the effect in Star Wars that shows the warp speed drive. The text "the wrong tree" appears, fading in to the scene. We had great difficulty in making the text say "the wrong tree" and fade in over the scene. Initially we just were able to have it fade to black and then have "the wrong tree" text fade in, which was something we did not want. But eventually, by using a crossfade transition, we were able to have "the wrong tree" text appear in front of the scene as it zoomed into the darkness. The scene then fades out to black, while "the wrong tree" text remains and then disappears, concluding the introduction of the film.